Welcome everyone, this is Trinity Storm here and you are watching second part of What If Naruto was bastard son of Minato. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Naruto took the time to knock Jiraiya out once he entered his operating room and then stripped him naked. He was a professional, after all, and he was not afraid of a man's naked body. So, while Jiraiya was gone, he took a blood sample, body measurements, and measurements of his penis length, girth, and shape. He got the materials he needed to mix together to make the concoction that would enhance a man's penis size depending on what they wanted once he had all the information he needed. Jiraiya had stated that he wanted his penis to grow as large as physically possible, and he was willing to do so because the man was a paying customer and a fan of his book. His body could grow to at least 10.5 inches in length, with a girth the size of a soda can. So, once the mixture was complete, he placed it in a syringe and stabbed it into Jiraiya's vein while holding Jiraiya's penis. As he pushed the plunger down, the size gradually increased until it reached the maximum amount that he could. Now that everything was done, he put Jiraiya's clothes back on before taking out a pill and snapping it under his nose, causing Jiraiya to wake up with a start. "Holy crap!" exclaimed Jiraiya, surprised, but he hadn't expected to be knocked out like that, so it was understandable. "Rise and shine, sleeping beauty," Naruto joked. The operation was a success. "Already?" Jiraiya asked, his hands going to his pants to feel his now enlarged appendage. "Well, hot damn, you really do work miracles, as they say." "Well, I do the best I can," Naruto said, smiling and shrugging. "But now if you would be so kind as to pay me what is owed," Naruto said, handing him a slip of paper with the bill written on it. Jiraiya took one look at it before pulling out his wallet and handing Naruto the full amount. This operation had been well worth the money. "Now to find myself a date and get some sweet loving," Jiraiya laughed, his confidence boosted exponentially by his size increase. "I would advise against that," Naruto said with a shake of his head. "Your body needs to adjust to the growth in size, and if you tried to do what you planned to do, too much blood would flow into your genitals and you would faint as a result." "Wait a minute," Jiraiya exclaimed, "so you're saying you made it bigger but I can't use it?" "At least for the next few days," Naruto said as he walked over to his desk and took 2 small bags filled with pills. "Now, take these before you go." "What are these?" Jiraiya inquired as he took the drugs. "Pills to help you," Naruto chuckled. "The red ones will help regulate your blood flow until it happens naturally, and the blue ones will prevent you from popping a stiffy until your body adapts." "Why would you give them to me?" Naruto simply raised an eyebrow, a really expression on his face. "Right," Jiraiya said, laughing slightly, "dumb question. But before you leave, I have a question for you," Naruto said, pulling out his cane and leaning on it. "Alright," Jiraiya said as he folded his arms, "shoot. Do you know of any cloning techniques I could use?" "Why would you ask me that?" Jiraiya wondered, his face puzzled. "In my line of work," Naruto admitted with a sigh, "I am in high demand to help heal so many people. The problem is that I am only one man and so I have to go out and gather materials, and when I do that I can't heal people while I get the necessary materials. I tried using my own cloning technique that uses my bloodline, but the drawback to it is that I need the same amount of materials." "Well," Jiraiya said after a brief moment of thought. He was aware of one specific clone jutsu, but it was only used by those who lived in Konoha, and even then, only by their most powerful members. He was initially opposed to telling Naruto about it, but Naruto made an excellent point about how it would help him in his medical practice. "I know of one who can assist you. However, while I am capable of teaching it to you, I need your word that you will not use it against the shinobi of our village in any way." "You have my word as the surgeon of death," Naruto stated solemnly. "I only wish to use it to gather the materials I need to heal while still healing, and I am a neutral party in all shinobi matters, so I only defend against those who attack me and do not seek out opponents to fight. I am a doctor, not a shinobi." "Alright," Jiraiya said. He demonstrated the proper hand gestures for activating the shadow clone jutsu, which Naruto then copied and used himself. This made him happy because he was being completely honest about his intentions for the jutsu, so he summoned a door and sent the clone he created through it to pay a visit to one of his friends from whom he purchased materials. He could order large quantities to be delivered to the building now that he had one. "I thank you," Naruto said, reaching out his hand to shake Jiraiya's. "With this, I will be able to heal so many more people." "You are welcome," Jiraiya said as he saw Naruto summon another door leading back to the village, "but while we're on the subject, is there any way I could persuade you to join our village?" "Ha," Naruto laughed. He knew there would be a few attempts to persuade him to stay in the village, 1 out of 3 it seems. 1 out of 3? Jiraiya inquired, a perplexed expression on his face, as that was an unusual thing to hear out of the blue. "Well," Naruto said after a brief moment of thought. Jiraiya may be a spymaster for the village of Konoha, but there was no harm in explaining what he meant because the information wasn't critical or even vital. "Allow me to explain. Every time I enter a major village, or even a minor one, the people there try no less than 3 times to get me to join up and set up shop there, but each time I decline their offers, and believe me when I say that they offer me a lot to stay." "But why don't you settle down?" Jiraiya suggested, "It would make your life easier because you would be safer in a village than on the road as a nomad." "Medicine is a universal thing," Naruto said, shaking his head, "and as such it is not limited to one place. I am a one-of-a-kind doctor who heals all who pay me, and since I am wandering around as a nomad, my client list is much larger." "How much money do you make?" Jiraiya inquired, "if you don't mind me asking." "More than I could possibly spend in a lifetime," Naruto simply stated. This was true because he had so many paying clients, and even though there were those he helped for free out of the goodness of his heart, albeit with threats of harm if they ever told anyone because he wanted to maintain his image, he still made a lot of money. However, he did not spend the majority of that money on himself. He maintained 4 separate funds. One was used to purchase ingredients and materials for his medicine. The second was the smallest, which he used for his personal needs, which he reduced to food and clothing. He grew up poor and didn't require much because that's how he was raised. The third was in an account that he left alone and only gradually added to. This one was saved for when he eventually started a family because raising one cost money. The last one was the biggest he had to his name. The vast majority of his earnings were used to fund 14 different orphanages spread across the elemental countries. He knew what it was like to be without parents, so he used his money to make sure those orphans had what they needed, as well as free healthcare while they were living there. He'd been doing this for 3 years, with each of them getting a renovation because they were in need of repairs, as well as getting rid of the person in charge because they were all greedy assholes who were embezzling money meant to help the children into their own accounts. Naruto found a variety of trustworthy people to run the establishments, and the children were pleased. He was the big brother they had always desired. While it was true that they were orphans, with Naruto around, they all felt as if they had family. "But I've taken more than enough of your time," Naruto said as he opened the door and motioned Jiraiya to leave, "and I need to prepare for tomorrow." "What will happen tomorrow?" "Word spreads quickly in this village," Naruto explained simply, "so I'll set up a small booth and help those who pay me. That'll be pretty much my entire day tomorrow." "Well," Jiraiya said with a smirk on his face. He was pleased with the enhancement he had made to himself. He couldn't wait to get him some once these few days were up and his body had adapted. He might just try his luck again and go after Tsunade. Who knows, she might just cave now that she sees what he's packing. What a wonderful day that would be. Have fun with it, and good luck. You, too, Naruto said as he extended his hand to shake Jiraiya's. Jiraiya shook his hand and walked out the door. Naruto followed suit and pushed the door open as he returned to his hotel room. He came to a halt halfway through when memories of his clone flooded his mind. He was unaware that he would inherit the clone's memories, as this was not the case with the blood clones he created. But, in all honesty, it only served to help in the long run. But he eventually made his way to his room, which he had to himself this time while Kuretsuchi and Haku shared one. He was brewing himself a cup of tea when a shinobi entered the room disguised as him. This shinobi was a member of Danzo's root forces and a member of the Yamanaka clan. He had orders that were absolute. He was told to wait until late at night, when Naruto was most vulnerable, and then infiltrate his mind and implant the suggestion that he settle down in Konoha. The root shinobi sat in his chair, getting comfortable as he patiently awaited the time when he would complete his order. A few hours later, Naruto had gotten up late in the night. To keep himself awake, he had taken one of his anti-sleep deprivation pills. He was in the process of developing a concoction that he intended to use in the future, and he didn't want to sleep and lose it. He had just finished noting how to repeat the process in the future when he heard a knock on his door. He initially assumed it was Haku, but that was unlikely given that he had asked her to stay away while in this village. He had explained that this village, particularly Minato, would use whatever means necessary to keep him within the village. So they were just squad mates while they were here. So, his curiosity piqued, he made his way to the door and opened it to see who was there. H would have looked through a peephole first, but hotel rooms don't have them, so he simply prepared the wires in his glove in case this was some sort of abduction attempt. But, much to his surprise, it was not an ambush or any other kind of attack. In fact, the person standing there was the last thing he expected to see in this situation. Kushina Uzumaki, Minato Namikaze's wife, was standing nearby. "Hello there," she said softly, attempting to alleviate the tension. "I'm sorry," Naruto said as the initial shock faded, "but if you're here for medical reasons, you'll have to wait until tomorrow. I'll have everything ready by then." "I didn't come for medical reasons," Kushina explained with a wave of her hand. "Now that I've had a good look at you, I can see you're in good health," Naruto said, "but if you're not here for medical reasons, why are you here?" "May I enter?" "Sure," Naruto said as he waved her in and shut the door behind him. "Please tell me this isn't a late-night booty call." "I'm flattered, but I'm already taken." Kushina paused in mid-step for a second before laughing at the unexpected response. "No, that is not why I have come," Kushina said, pausing her laughter. "I would also like to state that I am a married woman." "Do you think that changes things?" Naruto sighed. "I've had a few offers from married women offering themselves as payment for my services or attempting to entice me to join their village." "And let me guess," Kushina chuckled. She was a mother who understood hormones, and since this man was probably 16, he was the type of guy who would accept pussy thrown at him if offered. "You went along with it but didn't join." "No, on all accounts," Naruto said as he sat in one of his room's chairs, "because my mind is used more for science than for fleshly pleasures. Don't get me wrong, I am no virgin. I am just not a whore, and I will not accept sex as payment because it does not pay the bills or for materials. But enough about that, why are you here?" "Truly," Kushina stated solemnly, "it was simply curiosity." "I'm curious as to what exactly," Naruto inquired, raising an eyebrow. "Your parents," Kushina inquired, looking the young man in the eyes to ensure he was speaking truthfully, "who were they?" "Why do you want to know who my parents were?" Naruto asked, a smirk on his face. He didn't like where this conversation was going for some reason. "You referred to my daughter as your sister in Wave while she and her squad were on a mission, and I'd like to know why." "Is that all this is about?" Naruto exclaimed as he burst out laughing. "Because I called her that? I just said that to catch her off guard, and it worked." "Why did you need her caught off guard?" Kushina inquired. "Her squad had nearly killed my friends," Naruto explained simply, "so I diverted their attention long enough to get them to safety." "But still," Kushina said, sensing something more to this story than what was being told, "who were your parents?" "I only ever knew my mother," Naruto lamented, "her name was Mocha. She had no family other than me, and she died when I was only 5. She meant everything to me, and her death nearly destroyed me, so a simple word of warning, never disrespect her in my presence." "I mean no disrespect," Kushina said, "and I'm sorry to hear your mother died so young, but who was your father?" "To be honest," Naruto said with a shake of his head, I have no idea who he is. He left us to fend for ourselves, and I've never met him in my life. That must have been difficult for such a young man like yourself, Kushina said in a motherly tone of sympathy. If it is any consolation, my homeland, as well as the vast majority of my clan, were all killed off in the Second Shinobi War, so I know how it feels to lose family. I know you're trying to be sympathetic, Naruto sighed, but your clan was well known for their proficiency in seals and their strength, whereas I was the son of an unknown man and a woman whose tombstone has nothing more than the date of death along with her name. People will remember your family for years, but no one will remember mine. So please don't compare us because we are not alike. Well, I apologize if I struck a sour note, Kushina began before feeling a pressure send a cold shiver up her spine. You came to my room in the middle of the night and demanded to know who my parents were, Naruto growled. To be reminded that he no longer had a family infuriated him. For what? To mock me? To do as so many have done in my youth and insult me for being worthless? I worked my ass off to get where I am today with my infamous reputation. I had no clan name to coast off of, and I made a name for myself. I meant no disrespect with my inquiry, Kushina said, worried that Naruto would attack her out of nowhere. Well, you've done it, Naruto said simply, pointing to the door. Now leave me alone, and warn your daughter that when we fight in these exams, I'll hold nothing back. Those were the last words Kushina heard before the door was shut in her face. She could only stand there for a few moments, thinking about what had just been told to her. The fact that he had an apparent vendetta against her daughter, as well as the fact that he was taking the exams, surprised her. If this was the case, she needed to make sure her daughter was ready to fight him, so she set out to do some last-minute training with her daughter. As she walked away, Naruto could only laugh to himself because it had worked out better than he had hoped. He wasn't upset about what had been said. He just wanted Kushina to leave so the conversation could end before she dug too deeply into his past. He knew who his father was, and he was going to make him pay dearly in the end. He took a few steps to pack his tools and books, but his body fell forward as his mind went blank. Mindscape. Naruto awoke with a migraine. When he opened his eyes, he saw a massive hospital in front of him and knew exactly where he was. Faust had always advised him to organize his thoughts in a familiar setting, and a hospital was the one he was most familiar with. He knew exactly why he was in his mind, and knowing the reason only irritated him even more. He had always feared that someone would fuck with his mind like Ino had done years before, but he had no way of making himself immune to the Yamanaka family jutsu. He had tried to find a way, but all he could do was create a seal that would slow down the process enough for him to expel the intruder of his mind from it. While he was no master of sealing like the Uzumaki, he made do with what he had. He had learned to be strong-willed over time, so he was capable of doing so. His memories were represented as files, just like in any hospital, and he had the various rooms filled with the usual medical equipment, but were devoid of anything vital. He noticed that a portion of the hospital's lights flickered out briefly before going out completely. That's where the intruder was, and his eyes turned rage-filled as he summoned a lever on the wall and yanked it hard. As he did so, an alarm went off throughout the facility, and the sprinklers went off. The problem with these sprinklers was that they didn't spray water. It was red. When the alarm went off, the intruder to his mind had spent what felt like hours searching for the location of Naruto's memories in order to complete his mission. This surprised him because he had no idea his mind was being invaded in the first place. What made matters worse was that the sprinklers sprayed blood instead of water. He became drenched in the thick liquid, and as a result, he became stuck in place for reasons he didn't understand. So, said Naruto, who appeared near the man and returned the lights to the area with a click of his fingers, this is the man who invaded my mind. How is this possible? The man growled emotionlessly, you shouldn't be here. Well, this is my mind, Naruto said with a growl. He'd had a few encounters with shinobi wearing masks like this one before, and all he could learn from them was that they were a member of Root. You should have considered that before invading it. You will serve my master, the man said, you have no choice. "I'd try to get information out of you," Naruto said as he removed the man's mask. And, like all the other root shinobi he'd encountered over the years, he was pale-faced and emotionless. And, like the rest of them, he was probably wearing a seal to prevent him from talking or divulging information. But it would be for naught. "Tell whoever your master is that I serve no one and will never serve anyone." Naruto then formed the curved blade on the edge of his cane into a scythe using the blood surrounding him. He then decapitated the man, whose body dissolved once he was dead. Naruto growled and snapped his fingers, causing all of the blood to vanish, leaving the area as clean as it had been before everything happened. With a sigh, he quickly vanished from his own mind, his work completed and the intruder banished. The following day, Naruto had gotten up early to find a suitable location for his temporary shop. And because he was born here, he knew exactly where he wanted to put it, dead center in the village square, visible to anyone and everyone who came this way. He sat there for about 40 minutes before his first customer arrived. The procedure was straightforward. The customer would tell him about their medical problem, and depending on what was wrong with them, Naruto would hand them the necessary paperwork, which they would then fill out. The paperwork assisted in identifying the exact problem they were experiencing, and he would then sign off on it and enter the price in the box left blank for that reason. The first customer came to him because he couldn't use his arm due to a severed muscle. Naruto showed him the price, which he accepted, and the customer left pleased that he could now use both arms. To be honest, the man was fortunate because healing a severed muscle was less expensive than reattaching a severed limb. He could do it quickly, but it would cost more. After the man left, more people arrived to receive aid similar to what he had. And within a few hours, there was a crowd of people filling out the necessary paperwork. Only 3 people stood out among the many who came to see him that day. Anko Mitarashi, a former student of the traitorous Sannin known as Orochimaru, was the first. "So I hear you're the infamous Surgeon of Death," she said as she appeared, munching on a dango stick. "That's what I am," Naruto chuckled. This had been said to him numerous times over the years, including at least a dozen times today. "So, how exactly can I assist you today?" "Well, I need help with a personal matter," Anko admitted sheepishly, rubbing the back of her head. "So, what STD do you want me to eliminate?" smirked Naruto. He noticed Anko look surprised when he asked that before she began to growl. "I don't have an STD," she exclaimed angrily. "Well, that's good to know," Naruto said with a smirk. "Do you hear that, men? She's clean." Naruto heard men in the crowd laugh as he said that because it was funny. But as they laughed, Anko became enraged that she was being mocked and portrayed as some sort of whore. "I'll kill you for that," angrily exclaimed Anko. "Greater people have tried," Naruto stated simply. "But, aside from that, what can I do for you?" "Well, I hear you perform what many consider miracles," Anko said, his voice a little sad. "To be honest, I've been trying to find someone who can help me for years and they haven't been able to, so I'm desperate at this point. Please tell me what's wrong with you, and I'll see what I can do to help. One of my old teacher's curse seals was placed on my body when I was younger. So you want to see if I can remove it?" Naruto inquired, raising an eyebrow. "Well, show me the mark and I'll tell you what I can do." Anko cocked her head and drew her coat down to reveal the mark on her neck. Naruto examined it carefully with his finger. The chakra in his fingertips showed him enough to figure out what it was. Naruto looked around for about a minute before pulling out one of his personal notebooks. "Can you do anything about it?" Anko inquired, hopeful. She genuinely desired to be free of this cursed seal once and for all. All of the hatred and ridicule were beginning to leave their imprint on her. "Actually, I can," Naruto said as he closed his notebook and saved it for later. "Wait a minute," Anko exclaimed, surprised. To be honest, she didn't think he would be able to help her. "Did you just say you could assist?" "Yeah," Naruto said simply and straightly, "in my career as a doctor, I have healed 11 different people with various curses on their person. Out of all of them, I only ever lost one, but that was because the curse was far more complex than I expected. Yours is not even that complex to understand, and so I can easily remove it. But I will need 3 things from you. Anything, Anko said, jumping in place with glee. I'll need a pint of your blood, a month to prepare, and money to pay for the surgery. Whatever the cost, she exclaimed happily, I'll gladly pay. Well, you're lucky I'm not an asshole who would take advantage of that fact, Naruto said as he pulled out his price book. He flipped through the book and showed her the exact cost of the operation once it was completed. She noticed that it was a little pricey, but she could afford it because her job paid so well. Naruto made her sit in a chair so he could insert a needle into her vein and extract the blood he required. He collected it, placed it in a small metallic case, and walked through his door to put it in the freezer with the rest of the blood. She hugged him tightly when he returned and then went about her business for the day. The second person, or people, since there were 2 of them, who he remembered, were 2 people he never expected to see in person. Naruto was about to hand some pills to an older man who was having erectile problems when 2 people, a young man and a young woman, appeared out of nowhere and shoved her out of the way. They were both dressed in what could be described as crimson-colored regal attire. Naruto was already getting a headache just from their arrogant demeanor. The man had short hair, but the fact that his left eye was scarred from what appeared to be a fire jutsu of some kind drew people's attention. The female had her hair tied up with 2 needles, and to be honest, she was clearly the more arrogant of the 2. Naruto stood up and helped the man to his feet before handing him the pills he had been given. The 2 nobles looked at him as he ignored them to assist another filthy commoner. Hello, the woman said arrogantly as she stood there. If you haven't noticed, Naruto said as he turned around to acknowledge them, there is a line, so if you're here for medical assistance, you must wait your turn. Do you have any idea who we are? Growled the man. Not one clue, Naruto admitted honestly, having never seen them before. Such arrogance, the woman remarked, implying that everyone in Fire Country should know who they were. In terms of hierarchy, they were just below the Fire Daimyo and their family. Everyone recognizes us. I don't, Naruto said, shrugging his shoulders. We are Zuko and Azula of the Kan noble family, the newly named Azula explained. Wait a minute, Naruto paused as he heard those names. What were your names again? Zuko, Kan and Azula. It took all of his self-control to remain calm and quell the rage inside of him at that moment. He remembered those names vividly from his mother's journal. These were his aunt and uncle. The same aunt and uncle who made his mother's childhood difficult because she did not see the world through their family's arrogant eyes.
The journal went into great detail about the bullying they had inflicted on her, with Zuko breaking her prized possessions and Azula tormenting her on an emotional level in order to make her feel worthless. Every fiber of his being told him to tear them apart and torture them as they had done to his mother when she was only a teenager, but if he did, he would be a wanted man in the bingo books for murdering such a noble family. If he was going to retaliate against them for what they had done, he would do it in such a way that no one could trace it back to him. Noble or not, Naruto said simply because he didn't want his voice to be tinged with rage, there is still a line ahead of you. Fine, Azula sighed angrily, how much to skip the wait? It's not about the money, Naruto stated simply, standing firm, it's about the principle of the matter. You can't bribe your way here. Do you not understand how nobility works, you worthless commoner? Screamed Azula as Zuko held her back so she didn't do something stupid against those who irritated her. He knew what she was capable of because several maids and butlers in their home had been subjected to such cruelty. Worthless commoner, Naruto snarled in her face. He wasn't afraid of her, and he never would be. Well, that's rich coming from the nobles who came to seek my assistance. You think you're better than the rest of us, but the reality is that we all function the same. We all have the same weaknesses, and money can't change that. Zuko let Azula go at this point because Naruto had insulted him as well, and he actually wanted Azula to fuck him up at this point. She took out a dagger to stab him because she knew her family had the money and power to get away with it.
This wasn't the first time she'd done something like this, nor would it be the last. When she threatened to stab him in the head for his arrogance, Naruto simply raised his hand to block the blade. It pierced his palm, prompting him to yank it from her grasp. "You appear agitated," Naruto stated flatly. With a flick of his wrist, he drew a syringe containing a strong sedative. He simply stabbed her in the arm with it, and it took immediate effect because she had collapsed unconscious. "You filthy," began Zuko before breaking off mid-sentence. Naruto held another syringe in his hand, ready to use it if he became violent. "Take your sister and wait like everyone else," Naruto stated flatly. Zuko simply nodded, stunned that he was being threatened in this manner. As Naruto instructed, he picked up his sister and walked back to the end of the line. Naruto paused for a moment to ensure that they had before taking the dagger's handle in his hand and pulling it out. His blood retracted back into the wound and reformed the skin so that there was no visible damage done to it once the wound was no longer plugged up with the dagger. His blood ability helped him heal from such things perfectly, and it was extremely useful. Zuko, on the other hand, was back at the front of the line in 5 minutes, which made Naruto sigh to see his arrogance. "What did I just say 5 minutes ago?" muttered Naruto. "You said I couldn't bribe you, so I bribed the rest of these commoners to skip past them instead," Zuko boasted. Naruto cocked his head and noticed a few people counting money in their hands. "Fucking smartass," Naruto muttered under his breath. "What can I do for you?" "We came to this village to hire Tsunade for her medical knowledge," Zuko explained, "but we happened to hear you were here and decided to hire you instead because your medical abilities are far superior to hers. And yet, not 5 minutes ago, you called me a filthy commoner," Naruto simply stated, "but I'm not going to argue with you. What do you need?" "Our father is gravely ill," Zuko said as he handed Naruto a scroll bearing the Kan family's insignia, a black fire. "And if he's going to live, he'll need a heart transplant." "So, I take it you have the donor heart ready to be transplanted?" Naruto inquired. "That we do," Zuko confirmed. The heart had come from one of their butlers, whom their father had hired specifically for this purpose because he knew he would require fresh organs of some kind. The young man had no family except his sick elderly mother, and he was happy to serve what he assumed was a good man because the job paid well and he sent the money he earned home to care for her. The man worked there for 2 months before his organs were harvested. To ensure that there were no loose ends, their father had hired a shady man to murder the woman so that no one would look for her son. "All right then," Naruto said as he opened the scroll. "I can be there in at least a week," said the official invitation to their home in the Fire Capital. "We need you even sooner." "Well, tough shit," Naruto said, "I have things planned, so that's the earliest I can help you." "In that case, we'll hire Tsunade instead." "Go ahead," Naruto said with a shrug, "but that will take even longer. From what I've heard from all the people I've helped, she is not even in the village. She is on one of her gambling tours, as people call it, and won't be back for a few weeks since she just left a few days ago. So even if you were to hire her, all that would happen is that she would get a message requesting her assistance and then most." "Fine," Zuko said, his teeth clenched. "We want to see you as soon as possible." "I'll be there," Naruto said, "but have my money ready or there will be no operation. I've dealt with Welchers before and know how to deal with them." Zuko left for good this time because their business was finished. Then Naruto helped those who came to him for medical help once more. To be honest, the money they were bribed with helped them pay their fees. Nothing else happened throughout the day, and it wasn't until he was packing everything up that he ran into someone he had expected to see. Minato Namikaze himself stood there, a grin on his face. "So you're the infamous surgeon of death I've heard so much about in the last few years," Minato smirked. He had Danzo send one of his root shinobi to change Naruto's mind so that when he arrived to offer him a chance to join their village, Naruto would eagerly accept. He hadn't heard back from the root shinobi, but since Naruto was no Yamanaka and didn't know how to use seals, he couldn't defend against a mental attack. And you are the infamous Yellow Flash Minato Namikaze, Naruto said before turning around. He was taking inventory to ensure he had everything and to determine what he needed to order more of. So, what brings you here now? If you're here for medical reasons, you'll have to wait until tomorrow because I'm currently closed. No, I do not require medical assistance, Minato said with a wave of his hand, but I am here to personally offer you the opportunity to join our village, and I even have the paperwork with me so that we can get that out of the way right now. No, Naruto replied. He didn't even pause with his inventory as he said that because he knew exactly what he wanted to say in response. Well then, all I need is your signature, Minato said on autopilot before Naruto's response hit home. What? I said no, Naruto replied, closing his inventory book and carefully packing his belongings. How is this possible? Minato pondered, given that the root shinobi should have been successful. How is what possible? Naruto wondered as he positioned the final piece of equipment. Nothing, Minato said, putting an end to that train of thought before it got too far. But is there anything Konoha could offer you to stay and set up shop in this village? We are regarded as the strongest of the 5 major villages. Stop preaching to me, Naruto said, turning around to face the man and looking him in the eyes. Your village has nothing more than the other major villages, and they have all tried to get me to settle down within it as well, but I prefer to remain a nomad and heal all who pay me to do so. And exactly what do you mean by that? Minato inquired, his face solemn. I know exactly who you are, Naruto said, glaring at the man who had caused him so much pain. And it amuses me greatly to see the same man who wouldn't even acknowledge my existence years ago now trying so hard to settle down in a village of which I have only bad memories. So you know the truth then, Minato growled. He had hoped Naruto would never find out about their relationship. And now he'd have to use a Yamanaka to erase that memory from his mind once Naruto joined their village. I got your hair color as well as your eyes, Naruto said as he folded his arms. I am a doctor and I perfectly understand genetics. So, if you know the truth, Minato asked, raising an eyebrow, why would you refuse an offer to stay with family?
Family, Naruto said through clenched teeth, you dare claim to be such a thing to me.
You who abandoned us when we had nothing. You who left us to die without a shred of aid to sustain us. You who slapped the woman you had a child with and begged you on her hands and knees to aid us, and you slapped her and threatened not only her life but my own as well? You were willing to harm a child. So you know the truth, huh you little brat? Minato asked before whistled. A dozen root shinobi appeared out of nowhere. Minato didn't want to go down this road, but his first plan had failed, so he switched to plan B, abducting him and brainwashing him in the root facility beneath the village. 2 out of 3, Naruto said, cracking his neck, so this is your grand plan? Listen here, you little brat, Minato said with a glare in his eyes, you have one of 2 options here. You can either come quietly to begin your re-education to become a citizen of Konoha, or you can fight my men here and if you manage to kill them, you will be placed within the bingo book with such a high price that even your own customers will turn on you to try and turn you in for the reward. Is that what you think? Naruto asked, pulling out a blood-filled bottle, but you don't know who I'm friends with. And why does that matter? Minato inquired, raising an eyebrow. In my career as a doctor, I have helped many people of political influence from multiple countries, including 7 daimyos, 3 of whom are from major countries and the others from minor. I have befriended them all, not for personal gain, but because they are nice people and I like to get to know my patients better so I know how to help them. They know who I am because they, too, have gotten to know me on such a personal level. That changes nothing, Minato said as he was about to order his men to capture Naruto. Oh, but it does, Naruto said with a sinister grin, because if you try to capture me like you are, then I will simply kill your men and leave this village and not return. He said that, but in his mind he knew he had to return to help Anko because he said he would cure her curse seal and he was a man of his word. And if I do that, then the world will know exactly why I left. They will know that the boy who was abandoned by his father before he was born is now being hunted by the man who abandoned him now that he has made a name for himself. The world will know who you truly are, and they will not see you as a Konoha hero, but as the monster that we both can plainly see you are hiding from the public. Minato was enraged at this point because he disliked being challenged, especially by someone he saw as a brat like Naruto. This would not be tolerated. Do you really believe you can defeat so many of my men by yourself? Minato inquired. It's funny you should ask that, Naruto said, raising his gloved hand and bending his fingers slightly inwards. Minato turned around as he heard the clear sounds of men choking and saw the root shinobi all grasping their necks as trickles of blood ran down their necks. Because I can and do it quite easily if necessary. What? Minato exclaimed, stunned that his men had been subdued so easily. How is this possible? You were trained to fight like a shinobi, the same way anyone has been trained with the exception of samurai, Naruto said as he tightened his grip on the wires wrapped around their throats, but I was trained to fight like a doctor, who no one has been trained to counter in their lifetime, which gives me the edge to do such things like this. Oh, Minato remarked sarcastically, this brat thought he could kill him so easily, and why the fucking sudden change of heart? Because I don't want you to die yet, Naruto glared, you took everything from me. My childhood, my mother, and even tried to ruin my future by denying me the opportunity to join the academy. You would have attempted to harm my daughter in retaliation for what I did to you. No, I wouldn't, Naruto simply stated, because your daughter is a bitch who also added to my pain in our youth. You should be proud, because she takes after you so well. Don't you dare to offend my daughter. And don't you dare attack your son, you hypocritical narcissist. Are you going to be a good boy and leave me alone, or should I scar you up to the point where you can't hide your shame from the rest of the world? Minato grumbled because this was not in the plans at all. Since the root Yamanaka shinobi should have been successful in his mission, it should have been a simple acceptance of his offer to join the village. They would have used the CRA as a member of their village to start a new clan of highly advanced medics with Naruto's abilities. Sure, there would have been a meeting with the other members to discuss such a matter, but with the reasoning being Naruto's blood-using ability, which he still didn't know how he had because it wasn't a known one, it wouldn't have been a problem and there would have been no objections of any kind. But, eventually, he signaled for his men to retreat, and the wires around their necks retracted the moment he did. This isn't over, boy, said Minato in rage as he made to leave, for in the end you will serve this village. You are correct about this not being over, Naruto smirked, because I will make you suffer as I have for years, taking everything you love from you so that you can feel my pain. Those words caused Minato to come to a halt and turn around to face Naruto with a murderous glare. Stay away from my family, brat, he said venomously, or I will show you that there are fates worse than death. I was about to say those exact words to you, Naruto chuckled. Looks like I am your son after all if we think so alike. This enraged Minato even more, but he vanished in a swirl of leaves before attacking Naruto in a fit of rage. Naruto couldn't help but laugh when he saw Minato tuck his tail and run like that. But his laughter was short-lived when his mind was once again breached and his body fell forward unconscious. However, this time was different because there were more root shinobi involved because the plan was to capture him in this state. However, their plan was not going to go as planned because Naruto had planned for this. He knew they'd try to use a Yamanaka again, so he summoned a crow and requested their assistance in escaping if it happened again. When asked, they provided their full support as well as additional assistance. A single crow had been watching Naruto all day and acted the moment they saw Yamanaka use his mind possession jutsu. A swarm of them attacked Yamanaka and carried him towards the door to Naruto's operating room, which was still summoned, before transforming his body into a flock of crows and bringing him back to the room as well. Once inside, the door disappeared. All had gone according to plan. A wise man once said that when making a plan, you should think 3 moves ahead of your opponent, and Naruto had taken this advice to heart most of his life when he decided to leave the village of Konoha to seek his destiny in life elsewhere. Making a plan was relatively simple when you know so much about the ones you're up against. So, When the Yamanaka infiltrated his mind in an attempt to brainwash him into serving Konoha against his will and failed, he knew that whoever sent the man in the first place would try again. He had no idea when the secondary invasion of his mind would occur, but he did plan for it ahead of time because, in truth, he wanted it to happen. For years, he had studied the brain thoroughly using a blood clone, the second one he had ever made because the first was flawed. He had hundreds of books on the subject, the brains of the foolish shinobi who tried to hurt him into submission because removing the organ would kill the person. But since he had already killed those people, it was not a problem. While Naruto would never admit it to Faust, his own mother, or even his closest friends and girlfriend, he only had one true fear in life. On the outside, he appeared to be a calm and collected man, and less provoked by an enemy of any kind, but that fear had been with him for years. His greatest fear was losing his memories, either through natural illness or through alteration, as the Yamanaka were capable of doing with their fucking family jutsu. He feared it at first because he saw what it could do to haunt you when he suffered nightmares because of Ino until he was 9, but now that fear was only increased because if he forgot what he knew, he would no longer be able to help others because no one had his powers that he had been gifted with when he ate the fruit he had as a young lad. This was why he conducted so much medical research. He wanted to be able to teach it to others so that there would be other doctors to heal when his time in this world came to an end. Sure, they wouldn't be able to do everything he could because his abilities were unique, but if shown how, they'd be the closest thing to it. So he had spent so much time trying to find a way to prevent such a thing from happening, and what made it even better was that there were people suffering from memory loss who volunteered to try out his procedures to see if they could be cured. While he wished he could say he got it right and they were all fine and healthy, that was not the case, and he had so many failures under his belt before finally reaching a breakthrough and discovering a cure. It was slow because he was basically reconstructing what had eroded over time, but he eventually found a way, and it was all worth it in the end. The saving grace of his failures was that those he failed did not suffer as a result. Despite making a scientific breakthrough in curing memory loss illnesses, he was still vulnerable to those damn Yamanaka and their fucking jutsu. He'd always remember the nightmares, even though he no longer had them, because the memories lingered. His bullies had so much fun making his life miserable, mainly because putting him down made them feel better about themselves, and their arrogance had never been stomped out by their parents, so it remained. Despite the pain they inflicted on him, he rose above it with the help of his mother, whose love was the driving force behind his determination to live. When she died, it was his rage against the man who had brought him into this world only to dismiss him and try to kill him. So every time they saw their punching bag out and about, it irritated them and started the process of hurting him all over again. Except for one, none of them could figure out why he kept coming back after they belittled him. Inoue Yuro. Many people saw her as a nice young girl going through a fangirl phase with her adoration for Sasuke Uchiha. But that was only a sliver of the truth, because she was one of the cruelest people in that group, with only Naruto beating the two of them in terms of cruelty. She had followed him home one night as he limped home, bleeding in several places and bruised in even more. She observed Naruto's mother bandaging him and applying healing ointment to his bruises. She could see how happy he was as she hugged him and assured him that everything would be fine in the end. She then put him to bed and read him a chapter of his favorite book to help him sleep, and as he dreamed sweet dreams, Ino rubbed her hands together and smirked because she had discovered his weakness. The next day, she had followed the two of them as Naruto followed his mother to work, and when she left Naruto in the main lobby to do her job, Ino struck. She had learned her family jutsu a few months before and had been itching to test it on someone. So, using the appropriate hand gestures, she infiltrated his mind and began to implant false memories in the part of it that affected his sleep. The nightmares were all the same, with minor variations that were simply his mother claiming to despise him and joining in on his anguish as others hurt him. This was his nightmare until he was 9 years old. And if it took the rest of his life, he would punish her for it because it was only after he left the village that he realized she was the reason for it because he had no fear of his mother and she was the only one of his bullies who had such an ability to implant it into his mind. Now he had the ideal specimen to begin unlocking the means to make himself immune to the Yamanaka. He knew he couldn't just up and kidnap someone because he wasn't a monster like that. True, he was a doctor who had done many inhumane things in his pursuit, but he was not going to commit crimes to obtain test subjects like that. This one was ideal because this one had attacked him first, indicating that it was clearly self-defense, and because whoever this guy was a member of an underground organization, which he was aware of because he was a member of Root. While he didn't know who ran the organization, he had fought enough of them to know their names. So, with those factors in play, there was no backlash for what he planned to do, but that was later because Naruto was back in his mind after it had been invaded again. Naruto stood on the edge of the hospital that represented his mindscape for the second time in 24 hours. While he was fairly certain that the intruder would be unable to counter his defenses like the last time he was here, he was simply too enraged to make the effort at this point. As a result, he conjured up a simple switch that connected to a button floating next to him. He flipped the switch, which turned on the button, which he immediately pressed once he saw the green light that indicated it was turned on. When he pressed the button, a loud alarm rang out throughout the building, followed by all of the lights turning off. When the intruder to his mind saw this, he stopped in his tracks and immediately began to look around, because the last time the light went out while he was here, he had been attacked and decapitated, which evicted him from Naruto's mind before he could complete his mission. However, this time Naruto had not even entered the building when it exploded in a geyser of blood, killing the man invading his mind once more. He awoke in the real world with a headache, but he had essentially flushed his mind by doing what he did, so it was bound to hurt. Fortunately for him, he awoke before the Root Nin, who was still engulfed in the crows that had dragged him into the operating room. Naruto quickly extracted a syringe from its packaging, extracted a powerful paralysis drug, stabbed him in the arm, and pushed the end of it down to inject it into the man's blood. When he did, he exhaled a sigh of relief because the unconventional plan he devised had worked out far better than he could have imagined. He thanked the crows for their assistance in the plan, and they cawed in response before poofing back to their summoning realm. He picked up the man and placed him on the operating table, where he then strapped him down tightly so that even when the drugs wore off, he could not escape. "I know you can't speak," Naruto said as he walked over to the cabinet door where he kept all his medical tools after sterilizing them so they could be used again later. He pulled out the ones he'd need, as well as an IV needle and a bag to collect blood. "So I won't ask you questions if I know for a fact that the drug I injected you with prevents you from responding. You were a complete moron to try to enter my mind for the second time after I warned you not to. But now that you've tried yet again after I stated that I serve no one, you're in this situation. I've been waiting for the opportunity to pick the brain of a Yamanaka like you, and now that you've attacked my mind twice, I'm perfectly capable of doing so. So please allow me to explain what I intend to do. I'm going to dissect your head and remove your brain, then tear it apart so I can fully understand how your clan deals with mental invasions. Then I'm going to figure out how to counter it indefinitely so that your clan can't mess with my mind again. So rejoice, because your death will be in the name of science, rather than for a meaningless cause like enslaving an unwilling person." Naruto then walked over and put on his thick gloves, which he wore for this type of thing because it was a much messier procedure than usual. He clicked his fingers to create a room once he had them on. Naruto smirked as he made the first cut into his unwilling test subject with a knife. After 15 hours, Naruto had finally accomplished his goal. He wiped the sweat from his brow, as this had been a difficult task to complete, let alone apply to himself. He had discovered the genetic mutation that allowed the Yamanaka to act as they did, and once there, he ran thousands of tests with varying results until he found the perfect one to use. He mixed the formula perfectly and then used his blood clone to strap him down with a tightened strap for his head so it couldn't move in the slightest and kept his eyes open. The formula had to be injected at an upward angle through the bottom of his left eye into the appropriate part of his brain. His screams echoed throughout the room as he suffered excruciating pain. But the pain intensified when the plunger was pressed and the formula was injected into his brain. He held his eye open after the syringe was extracted and the straps were removed in an attempt to alleviate the pain, which did not work. He felt like his head was on fire for what seemed like hours, but the pain was relieved in minutes. His body had broken out in a cold sweat, and he lay down on his back for a few minutes to regain his strength after the procedure had taken so much out of him. He had his blood clone to the standard full physical he always gave himself when he modified himself in some way, shape or form to ensure that he was still healthy once he could get to his feet. He left conjured up the door to his hotel room to sleep this all off, and as he did his blood clone completed his final task before he dispelled, which was to dispose of the body after harvesting the rest of the usable organs for future donors, and burned the rest of it away. After 3 days, Naruto awoke refreshed as he prepared for the day he and his friends had been anticipating for several days. He smirked because he was actually looking forward to this day and doing something other than healing people. Sure, that was his life's calling, but he could also enjoy other things. So, after he had finished getting clean, he put on the new outfit he had paid a tailor to make him for a special occasion like this. His new outfit was similar to his previous one, but with a different design. He wore the same hat, but only because it was special in ways that had yet to be revealed. He was dressed in a red short-sleeve t-shirt beneath a jet black button-up sleeveless vest. He wore dress pants with 2 crimson crisscrossed belts with a skull buckle on the front, a chain attached to the pocket, and an antique watch that he had received as payment from an elderly man who had no physical cash. It worked fine, and the design on the outside matched his outfit perfectly because it featured a carved image of the Shinigami. He wore thick black dress shoes that were custom-made and one of a kind. But it was the symbol emblazoned on the back of his white suit that made it perfect. In the years that Naruto had been taught in the medical field by Faust, the man had come to help him understand his powers far better than he could have learned on his own. Faust was a well-traveled man who had done and seen so much in his long extended lifetime, so much so that Naruto had questioned whether Faust was immortal, but he was never given an answer. Faust had left Naruto alone for a few days in order to obtain something that could help him that he remembered from a while ago. And all he brought back were 2 books, one a journal and the other a book about the powerful force he was capable of using known as Haki. He discovered that there were various types, and while they would have been useful in his life, he only had one rather than all of the more common ones. His was known as Conqueror's Haki, which was said to be used by 1 in a million people back when it was more common, which made him wonder how he had been given this power at all since Haki seemed to have died out. However, in comparison to the information contained in the journal, that piece of information was insignificant. It was very old, so he took great care to keep it intact in order to preserve it. It was written by the man who had the power of the cursed fruit he had eaten, and it was no coincidence that he was given the same nickname as Naruto for his actions. What was the man's name? The Trafalgar Act. This man had been a pirate captain in a long-gone era, as well as an incredible doctor with skills that no one else could ever hope to match. His journal contained extensive information about his abilities as well as various unconventional procedures that Naruto practiced and used himself. So, to honor not only the man whose name he had acquired, but also his power, he emblazoned the symbol the man once used for his flag on his ship onto his back. The man had been reborn in some ways through him, and he would make the man proud. And, based on what he wrote in the journal about his own quest for vengeance against the man who killed the man who had saved his life, he had a feeling law would support him in his efforts. With his new clothes on, he walked out of the room, pulling out his cane as he passed by his teammates' room. He tapped the door several times with the end of the cane, which caused them to come out as well because they were ready to go and had just been waiting for him to knock. They both blushed as they looked at him because he appeared to be both handsome and well-dressed. After they had finished blushing, they followed him to the academy where the test was being held. On the way there, not much happened except that most of the other applicants were staring at how he was dressed because it was not shinobi attire in any way. But Naruto didn't mind because he wasn't a shinobi. Many of the people who were trying to enter a classroom but were being denied entry by 2 men who were there to deter them had been perplexed. The trick, however, was that the test was on the next floor up, not this one. Naruto simply held his finger to his lips, telling the girls to remain silent, and continued walking towards the proper room. When they arrived, they were met with the combined killing intent of several shinobi from various villages. Naruto simply sighed, knowing that he needed to show these people that he was not to be underestimated. So, with a solemn expression on his face, he blasted his haki around the room. The mysterious energy caused everyone in the room to fall to their knees in cold sweat. They saw Naruto in a new light and realized he was a bigger threat than they had previously thought. The three of them then stood to the side, waiting for those who would arrive before the official test began. And, as expected, the rookies of Konoha appeared, along with a few others he didn't recognize, such as the Suna team, which included all three of the Kazecage's children. The test began shortly after, with the warning not to cheat on the written portion of it. Naruto didn't care and responded to the questions with nonsense answers. He was never trained as a shinobi, so he wouldn't know the correct answers. Plus, he was only doing it to put himself to the test, not to advance his position, because doctors had no ranks. Several people were caught cheating and were eliminated, but something unusual happened near the end. The person in charge of this portion of the test got up and told them that if they didn't get the final question right, they would be stuck as a genin forever, which Naruto didn't care about because he was a doctor. After all was said and done, and the written portion of the test was completed, Anko smashed through the window and ordered them to report to the Forest of Death for the next round of exams. When they arrived, they were instructed to sign legal waivers stating that the village would not be held liable for anything that occurred, such as injury or death. Naruto had completed the form and handed it to Anko, who had paused for a second before handing him a stack of bills and a scroll with the kanji for Earth on it. He kept the money because it was full payment for the procedure he was going to perform on her once everything was ready. He thanked her for the money and assured her that if things didn't go as planned, she could get her money back. She simply smiled and thanked him for attempting to assist her when no one else was. The rules for the second part of the exam were straightforward. Scrolls of 2 different types were distributed to those who took part. They had to have one of each of them before proceeding to the center tower, where they would pass. So, with the instructions in hand, the teams all went to their respective gates and saw them open, allowing them to proceed inside to begin the test. Naruto and his team charged in, expecting to be attacked at any moment because it was expected at this point. However, to their surprise, there were none. Nothing happened for 2 days, neither while they were traveling nor while the girls slept while he kept watch after popping one of his pills to stay awake so they could sleep. They finally met another team on the 3rd day, which turned out to be Squad 10 with Choji, Ino, and Shikamaru. "Why," Naruto sighed, "were you people the first people we met out of all the people we could have possibly met in these exams?" "Troublesome," Shikamaru agreed with Naruto's assessment. Shikamaru had heard about Naruto through rumors about the Surgeon of Death, and if even a fraction of them were true, this would not end well for his squad, so they would have to play this smart if they wanted to get out of this unscathed. "Finally, we get to fight someone," Kuretsuchi exclaimed with delight, as the previous few days had been tedious. It wouldn't have been so bad if Naruto hadn't brought his girlfriend with him so she could try to seduce Naruto while he was here, but since Haku was not only here but also in a relationship with the man she desired or herself, that wasn't an option. "Hold up," Shikamaru said, holding up his hands to try to calm the situation. "Maybe we can make a deal and leave as strangers." "What the hell are you talking about?" Choji asked. "Munching on chips, we can take these guys." "Choji," Shikamaru sighed, "listen to me when I say you don't want to fight that man the way we are right now. He is known as the Surgeon of Death and is known to have killed far more powerful shinobi. I'm glad someone in your group knows who I am." Naruto smirked as he extended his cane towards them. "And what was this about a trade-off I heard about? What scroll do you require? We have some extras." "We need a heaven scroll," Naruto stated flatly. Shikamaru took out the scroll they required and tossed it to them. You're lucky I'm not like the rest of you, because once paid, I do what I'm paid to do. I accept your payment, so proceed and hope we don't meet like this again because you don't have anything else we require on you. They took the hint and left the area as soon as they were told. Why didn't you let us fight them? Haku asked, almost demanding that he explain himself or face the consequences. He recognized this tone because he had missed a date night and had no excuse. He had no idea Haku knew enough about acupuncture points to paralyze someone, but he did after she hit him with so many of them and left him there. Icicles in the bloodstream were apparently a weakness of his, and he was relieved that she was the only one who could use such abilities. It's because you'll need your strength for what's to come, Naruto said simply as he started walking forward, but stopped after a few steps. He looked at the scrolls in his hands for a moment before tossing them to Haku. Why are you giving these to me? Haku inquired, raising an eyebrow. You guys go to the tower, Naruto said after a brief look around. There's a weed I'd like to pick while here for research purposes, and now seems like the perfect time to get it since we're already here. Alright, Haku said, a kind smile on her face. If there was one thing she knew about her boyfriend besides his cock size and his desire to protect those he held dear by any means possible, it was that when he wanted to go and collect something for research purposes, nothing could stop him. So she and Kuretsuchi made their way to the center tower to finish this section of the exam. Naruto could only smile because he was relieved to have found a woman to love who understood him as well as she did. But that smile vanished not long after they left. I know you're there, Naruto sighed, so there's no point in trying to hide from me. He waited for a minute, but no one came out to greet him, which irritated him slightly. So he opened his hand, as if stretching his fingers. He then swiped the air with his arm, causing the wires in his gloves to slice the trees around him into various sizes. You should take a few deep breaths and calm yourself, a snake-like voice said as a figure emerged from the rubble. I'm a doctor, Naruto smirked, so I know what I need to relax. I don't need a stranger's second opinion. Not even from the snake Sannin Orochimaru himself. Oh ho, said the now-named Sannin as he approached Naruto, but kept a safe distance between them. It appears that even the dubbed Surgeon of Death has heard of me. It's difficult not to hear about a man who conducts such heinous experiments on people. Plus, I was born here, so I know about you, Naruto said with a shrug of his shoulders. So a native Konoha citizen is the infamous surgeon, Orochimaru chuckled to himself. It appears that this village breeds the most unique of infamous shinobi in the world. Is there a point to all of this? Asked Naruto, pulling out his pocket watch and looking at the time with a bored expression on his face because he didn't see Orochimaru talking to him at all. Because if not, I have other things I want to get done in a limited amount of time to do so. I just wanted to meet the man behind the rumors, Orochimaru said as he paced around Naruto, and I have to say, judging by your aura alone, you are as formidable as they say you are. But, while I'm here, I'd like to invite you to join me. Consider what the two of us could achieve if we put our heads together. I've already accomplished what you couldn't, Naruto said with a shake of his head, so I don't see the point in working with a man who only cares about extending his own life rather than helping others. On this subject, we are diametrically opposed. And what exactly do you mean when you say you've accomplished what I haven't? Orochimaru inquired, his tone genuine in his curiosity. Why, for a self-proclaimed genius that you claim to be, Naruto said as his gaze shifted to the Sharingan he had taken from Itachi, something that Orochimaru looked at in shock because he recognized the things that he had tried to take from the man years ago and had failed in his attempts. The fact that you failed to understand me casts doubt on that. Impossible, Orochimaru exclaimed angrily, how did you get Itachi's eyes? I killed the man and stole them from him, Naruto blinked. Simple as that, he said, as his eyes returned to normal. And you honestly expect me to believe that you, a mere child, could kill someone as powerful as Itachi Uchiha? I don't really care what you believe, Naruto said, raising an eyebrow. I did, and I have his eyes as a result. So the real question now is what you intend to do about it. "Oh, nothing," Orochimaru said, "because I'm not here for you." "Oh really?" Naruto said, puzzled, "and what, pray tell, are you here for? Someone from my group?" "Oh no," Orochimaru said, waving his hand, "perish the thought." "Well, that's good for you," Naruto chuckled, flexing his fingers slightly, "because if it wasn't, I'd have to kill you. So you're perfectly fine with me doing what I'm doing to others but only care about your own group? I am a physician, not a shinobi. I stay away from politics. So you'll have to deal with the consequences, not me. But take a moment to reflect on the fact that you truly believed you could kill me. I'm not Itachi Uchiha, and I'm not going down quietly." "No," Naruto laughed, "you will die easier than him." Then Naruto flicked his finger. This caused one of his wires to sever Orochimaru's head, but it then dissolved and reverted to the mud from which it was made. But, while his Sharingan was activated, Naruto noticed that the thing he had killed was a mud clone. As he felt the teeth try to sink into his neck, he smirked slightly. He could feel them chipping as they bit into steel rather than flesh. "What the hell?" yelled Orochimaru, retracing his head and holding his mouth open in pain as blood oozed from the broken tooth. "What have you done to me?" "I told you I accomplished what you failed to do," Naruto joked. "You will pay for this," he raged, but while he would have tried again to mark the boy with his curse seal, he was also on a time schedule and had to leave now. He knew that with Minato and Danzo's root forces on his tail, he'd have to act quickly if he wanted to place his curse seal on the person he infiltrated the village to do so on. He hadn't intended to mark another person, but the Surgeon of Death was here, and the opportunity was too good to pass up. He'd heard what the brat could do and wanted him to join him willingly so he could mark him later when he knew more about his bloodline. He would definitely mark the brat for a future body now that he has shown more abilities than he expected. Before attempting to flee, he hissed angrily and threw a few smoke bombs to obscure Naruto's vision. Nonetheless, he screamed in agony as his arm was severed at the shoulder. "Did you really expect to curse me and walk away unscathed?" Naruto asked as he drew his hand back. Orochimaru's severed hand smashed into his own. Orochimaru paused for a split second to stare at him before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. Just something to remember this moment by, Naruto thought to himself as he opened his operating room door and removed the arm from cold storage. He wasn't sure what he could learn from it, but it was something he could look into in his spare time. "Well, now that I've dealt with that unexpected guest," Naruto said as he walked out of the room, dismissing the door as unnecessary. "Now if I can just get to my destination without any further hiccups." As soon as he said that, 24 root shinobi appeared and surrounded him. "One day," Naruto said sarcastically, "and I honestly don't know when it will happen, but I will eventually learn not to ask stupid questions that will jinx me. Alright, let's get this over with. So let's skip the whole, 'you will serve our master' speech and just get to the fighting part where I kill everyone and head off to my destination." The root shinobi exchanged glances for a moment before the group's leader stepped forward. "Well, this is different," Naruto noted as he whipped out his cane in preparation. Never had a volunteer come forward before. Naruto then briefly swirled his hand in the air. The root members who had come to kidnap him for what seemed like the 10th time in his life came to a halt for a few seconds before disintegrating. "Alright," Naruto said, pulling out a book filled with plant information, "so before yet another group appears to mess with me, let's find those plants I wanted to find while here." He then set out to find what he promised. He did send his group away to deal with the immediate threat of Orochimaru because they were not prepared to fight the man, but he was being truthful about finding the plants. They were powerful, to be sure, but Orochimaru was infamous for the tactics he used to win any and all fights, tactics that even the most infamous shinobi had succumbed to. The only way to beat the man was to be unpredictable, and dear Kami, when it came to fighting, Naruto was nothing more than that word to the fullest. So, with that in mind, he set out to locate them. 2 days later, Naruto stood with his group, who he noticed were glaring at each other heavily for some reason that when he inquired about, they turned their glares to him, so he backed off for his own safety, as did the rest of the squads that had passed the second part of the exam. Squad 7 caught his attention because he saw Sasuke return with them, but he was taken away shortly after arriving due to some strange markings on his neck. Naruto had confronted the young man twice and knew he had never had such markings on his neck before. So Naruto looked at this and deduced that this was the person Orochimaru went off to track after fleeing Naruto. So, while Sasuke was obviously receiving treatment to try and remove the seal from the boy, which he was fairly certain would not work because Anko's had not been removed and she had one far longer than Sasuke, the rest of the shinobi who passed the second part of the exam stood and watched as Minato explained why they had these exams. Naruto was writing in his notebook because he couldn't care less why they did it. As a doctor, it didn't matter to him. However, the next section began, and they were told that they would be pitted against one another to have the numbers for the final portion of the exam. Minato pressed a button, revealing a board on which the names of the two people fighting would be displayed. And, to no one's surprise, Naruto's name was the first, and he could only smirk at his opponent. Inuzuka Kiba. This guy was a jerk not only to him, but to many others as well. He pretended to be better than others when he knew he wasn't and hit on women who were disgusted by it and didn't want him to because he believed that as the alpha male, that he was entitled to do so. But Naruto despised him because he was the one who used his sense of smell to lead the group of his bullies to him. Kiba would find Naruto no matter where he hid. Then, when he got his fucking dog Akamaru, he'd have the mutt piss on him while he was being beaten to the ground to insult him, claiming that Naruto was a Zeta male, with no chance of ever rising up and should do the world a favor and just die. Naruto would love to show this alpha male what a Zeta male could do. The two of them walked to their starting positions as the rest of the participants walked up to the balcony to watch the fight from a safe distance. Well, if it isn't Kiba Inuzuka, Naruto said as he twirled his cane before slamming it down and leaning off of it, oh cruel irony. So you know who I am, Kiba said with an arrogant smirk on his face, because the fact that someone he didn't know knew about him fueled his ego far more than being a member of one of the founding clans had already done, but then again, an alpha such as myself should be known throughout the elemental countries. My notoriety will grow, and all women will swoon at my feet, begging to be bred as my bitch. No to all that, Naruto said, a mental gag that this man was not only sexist because he assumed women were simply his to breed, but the thought of him breeding alone made him gag. I simply know you from the past. Oh, is that right? Kiba asked, raising an eyebrow as he stood there with his arms crossed and that smirk still on his face. Naruto wanted to slap that smirk off his face right now, but he had a plan that would scar this jerk for the rest of his life. I'm surprised you don't recognize me, Naruto mused. You knew me so well when we were kids that it hurts me to see you forget me so easily. Kiba thought as he rubbed his chin. He examined Naruto from head to toe, but no matter how long he looked, he couldn't recognize him. I'm sorry to say that I'm not familiar with you in any way. That obviously means you weren't as important as you claim if I don't remember you. Well, now that I think about it, Naruto chuckled, it's easy to see why you don't recognize me. Apart from the fact that you only think with your dick, which I'm guessing is rather small given that you basically claim you have to rape women to reproduce, I don't look the same as I used to. Oh. I'm so fuck. Odd choice of words for this moment, Naruto remarked, shaking his head, and for the record, I'm straight, so no thanks on the offer. I'm going to fuck you. Oh. Naruto smirked, mockingly sympathetic, is the alpha male pissed at the words of a Zeta? Naruto's words caught Kiba completely off guard because he hadn't anticipated them. He had only ever called one person a Zeta in his entire life because the boy had been pitiful to not only him but also the rest of his group of friends. When the truth hit him like a ton of bricks, his eyes widened. Rag boy? He inquired. Because this was a surprise to them as well, all the others who had bullied Naruto alongside him opened their eyes in shock. They all assumed Naruto died somewhere sad and alone, and then went off and bullied others until they grew out of it years later. While they no longer bullied, their arrogance was visible to all. In the flesh, Naruto stated calmly. They all called him Rag Boy because his clothes were basically patched together rags, which he was fine with because he was warm. While inside he was furious that the nickname he despised had been brought up again after all these years, he calmed himself because his plan would make up for it all. It's nice to see you remember me. I have to admit that I look different in nicer clothes and with well-kept hair, so it's easy to see why you didn't recognize me. Kiba stared at him in shock for a few seconds longer before his expression changed to one of amusement. He started laughing so hard that he doubled over and clutched his stomach as tears streamed from his eyes. Naruto stood there calmly, allowing him to laugh because, in the end, he wouldn't be able to. I can't believe such a worthless person as you is my opponent, Kiba said when he finally stopped laughing and could speak properly, to think you survived when we all thought you died. Well, I'm alive and well, Naruto shrugged, thanks to the likes of you. You know what, Kiba said arrogantly, I'm in a good mood right now. So, how about we make a deal? I might not hurt you if you get down on your knees and beg me not to. I learned when I was 5 that you were a liar when you gave me that option, and I am not the same person I was before, Naruto said with another shake of his head. So, how about this for a bargain? You get down on your knees and forfeit the match, cementing yourself as my personal bitch for life. You could also fight me, but be warned that if you do, I will break you in ways that you will never recover from. Kiba didn't even respond to his offer with words, instead charging forward in a primal rage because the person he saw as so far beneath him was now demanding that he submit. This would not sit well with him, and he would hurt Naruto in such a way that he would never look up again. However, his attacks were not hitting their intended target because Naruto was easily able to dodge everything he threw at him. Kiba's moveset was easily predictable and dodgeable because he was fueled by rage and throwing punches wildly. After a minute of dodging, Naruto used a sweep kick to knock Kiba off his feet. He then jumped back to create some space between them. Damn it, hold fucking still! Exclaimed Kiba as he rose to his feet and prepared to launch another attack. It's not so easy to hurt me when you lack the numbers to overwhelm your target, is it? Naruto asked, frowning, because he remembered them ganging up on him. I don't require them to kick your worthless $1. Yet you haven't struck anyone. Neither do you. That's because I didn't want to just yet, said Naruto simply as he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He took out a vial of his blood and crushed it in his hand. He could feel the thick warm liquid creeping up his arm and onto his cane. Minato examined this with critical eyes because he was curious about how his bloodline worked. He didn't have much else to go on other than rumors and what his own daughter told him he could do, so now was the perfect time to see it in action. Naruto waited a few seconds for the blood to pool into the open mouth of the skull that topped his cane, then turned around and swiped down as the blood transformed into a curved blade, transforming the cane into a scythe. As it sliced Akamaru down the center, the blade came into contact with flesh. The mutt had been slowly creeping around the arena, hoping to attack from behind and catch Naruto off guard. He had no idea Naruto was aware of his whereabouts and was simply waiting for him to attack as he did. The mutt was severely slashed in half and died as a result. But before the two sections of the body even hit the floor, Naruto raised his hand and pulled the blood from the body out and formed into an orb in his hand. He took out another vial and funneled that blood, along with the blood used to form the blade, into it for later use. Although it was dog blood, with his bloodline, any type of blood could be used as a weapon. Akamaru! Exclaimed Kiba, shocked that his canine companion had been killed in front of him. He charged forward, grabbing hold of the mutt's two halves. Tears welled up in his eyes as he realized his friend had died, but along with the sadness came rage. That mutt was finally put down, as it should have been years ago, Naruto smirked, and now I had to be the one to do it. Kiba could only see that, as his rage grew exponentially. Naruto noticed his eyes changing into those of a rabid animal rather than a human, but his clan was similar to the canines they teamed up with. "I don't like being pissed on, or assholes in general," Naruto stated solemnly. "How dare you? How dare I?" sarcastically asked Naruto, placing his hand on his chest to emphasize his point, this coming from the boy who made it a hobby of his to hunt down a child his own age who couldn't defend himself and thought it was so much fun that he repeated the event again and again. "We were just kids." "Yes, we were," Naruto said, looking down with his hat covering his eyes, and adding, "but your actions have consequences. And, unfortunately for you, the bullied boy grew stronger and channeled his rage into a desire to better himself. Your actions contributed to this, and I even provided a way for you to escape unscathed, but you arrogantly believed you had already won. So this is your fault, not mine, and you will have to live with the consequences for the rest of your life." Kiba was too far gone at this point, and he took a stance to use one of his more powerful techniques, Fang over Fang. While his power had been halved as a result of Akamaru's death, his mind was not thinking rationally and only wanted to punish Naruto for his friend's death. So, in a massive burst of black energy, he charged forward in a rotating form designed to cut like a massive buzzsaw. Naruto didn't even move from his spot, simply raising his hand to deflect the attack. He used his steel release to harden it up, so when the attack connected to his outstretched hand literal sparks flew out from the friction of the attack hitting metal. Naruto was pushed back slowly as Kiba kept his attack up, but it wasn't doing the damage that he wanted it to. Minato and the others watching this were surprised as well since this was not something they thought would happen. They had assumed Naruto would dodge the attack rather than block it with his gloved hand, which only made them wonder what the hell the glove was made of. But, eventually, Naruto grew tired of it and channeled more power into his hand. This caused it to glow so brightly that it was visible even with the glove on. Naruto smirked as he expelled the power in a controlled explosion that blew Kiba back a long distance. Kiba took his time getting back to his feet, and he noticed that his face was bleeding. "Genin Kiba," Minato said, clearly concerned for the young boy's safety. Sume was a friend of his and he didn't want her son to get too hurt. "Do you wish to continue?" "Yeah, Mutt," Naruto laughed. "Do you want to keep going?" "Because I completely understand if you do. It simply means that I have won, and you are now worse than a Zeta male." "I wish to continue," growled Kiba, who would not let that insult go unpunished. He wasn't sure how he was going to do it, but he was going to make Naruto pay. Naruto simply stood there because he was not at all intimidated. He was hoping Kiba would continue, and had planned for it if he did. But he knew how Kiba thought and how to manipulate him into fighting this one-sided battle. "Come then, Kiba," Naruto said, holding up his hand and opening it to form an open palm. Minato saw him do this and knew exactly what was going to happen. He attempted to stop it by signaling his shinobi, but it was too late. Kiba charged forward again, but this time thin red lines appeared out of nowhere around his arms and legs. Naruto then tightened his grip, tightening the wires that he had channeled chakra through to superheat them. Kiba's arms and legs were severed in sections, and the wounds were cauterized to prevent him from bleeding out. Kiba fell face first into the ground, screaming in agony at the loss of his limbs, but it wasn't just his arms and legs he'd lost because the angle the wires cut into his legs also cut off his cock and balls. People watching turned green in the face as they witnessed this, as it was gruesome in every sense of the word. Medic Nin appeared and took the boy to the hospital for emergency surgery. As he watched them take the boy and his severed limbs, Naruto simply smirked. They planned to try to heal him, but the damage was irreversible because he had cut the limbs into sections that were also cauterized. Naruto made his way up the stairs, but his path was blocked by Minato, who was furious. "Why did you do this to Kiba?" Minato demanded angrily. "I warned him that if he fought me, I would break him in such a way that he would not be able to recover." Don't blame me for the results when he had the chance to leave, Naruto said as he walked around the man who had sired him. You didn't have to ruin his shinobi career like you did, Minato yelled behind him. Naruto had to stop walking in order to speak. The entire world is aware of what I do to those I dislike, for reasons ranging from threats to friends and loved ones to threats to my services. This is what I do to those I vehemently despise. I won't kill them because that would be too easy, but I will put them in a situation where they will wish I had. Keep that information in mind for the future. Naruto then walked up the stairs after saying what he needed to say, leaving Minato with a cold chill as he began to sweat in fear.
That's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.